How do we get them in front of decision makers and legislators that probably need to come out and see these things fly? It's taking place, but it's not happening in a location where it's convenient, and it's not happening in a location where we can get these politicians and legislators out quickly. I think recently the DoD just gave a big contract to Israel, and we're kind of over here saying, why wasn't that an American company? Why can't we forward capabilities that we're creating right here in the United States and provide those services to our own government?
You're listening to the Drone Radio Show podcast, the show about drones and the people who use them for business, fun, and research. Hosted by Randy Goers.
Hello, everyone. This is Randy Goers, and welcome to the Drone Radio Show podcast, episode 330. Where can American companies go to innovate? For that question, we head to Leesburg, Virginia, to speak with Preston Huntington, Client Relations Manager at Xelevate Solutions. Xelevate is the Mid-Atlantic region's premier UAS Center of Excellence. With on-location labs and various operational areas, Xelevate offers innovators and operators a safe location to mature unmanned products, policies, and procedures in any industry. At Xelevate, Preston manages all communications and contacts with the public, including government agencies, education organizations, and private companies. Prior to Xelevate, Preston served as a Program Analyst at the United States Marshal's Procurement HQ team, working side by side with law enforcement contractors. His career has also seen him serve in various roles in the higher education industry, eventually becoming the Director of Admissions at the Texas A&amp Bush School of Government and Public Service in Washington, D.C. Preston has a Master's in International Relations and a Bachelor's in History from Norwich University. In this episode of the Drone Radio Show, Preston introduces us to the Xelevate UAS Center of Excellence and shares how the center can help strengthen American position and presence in the drone industry. But before we hear from Preston, I want to thank those of you who are supporting my funding campaign. Whether it's $1, $100, or much more, you can help defray the cost of production and keep the podcast going and growing. Go to droneradioshow.com/donate. And by the way, if you have a great story on the use of drones that you'd like to share in a podcast, contact me at randy@droneradioshow.com. So let's learn how a new private UAS Center of Excellence can help American companies innovate with Preston Huntington of Xelevate. Let's pick up the interview where I asked Preston to introduce himself.
My name is Preston Huntington. I'm the Client Relationship Manager for Xelevate. I help manage all of Xelevate's contacts, community relationships, and partnerships with local community-based organizations, academic institutions, and all of the forward-leaning organizations that we're working with.
Preston, what is Xelevate?
Xelevate is going to be the first and really only privately held UAS Center of Excellence in the Washington D.C. region. We're headquartered out of Leesburg, Virginia, about 1 hour west of Washington D.C. And for those familiar with the airspace, we're about 2 miles outside of the Special Flight Rules area and right outside the Beltway Bandits and the 28 corridor. So Northern Virginia located, but D.C. region.
What's the significance that the site lies outside of the flight area?
It's significant in the sense that any of the organizations and customers that come to our facility for demonstration, testing, showcase purposes, they can do so in an environment that doesn't really restrict them. We're in uncontrolled Class G airspace up to 400 feet. So there's no aviation pathways above us that are really interfering with any of the operations that we do at our facility.
Why was Xelevate created? What was the need or the problem that you were trying to solve?
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack with this question. I'll try to keep it short. So I mentioned that I'm the Client Relationship Manager at Xelevate. I'm one of 4 on the executive team, joined with about 20 or so advisors that are backing us from all of our previous lives. But this is really the brainchild of Andrew Beechlin and Marcy Eisenberg. She is the CEO, and Andy is the vice president and co-founder. Andy and Marcy owned and operated a technical operations business in the national security industry for about 13 years. And in their time working with warfighters overseas and people here domestically in that national security space, they realized that, over the course of, 2 to 4 years, that unmanned systems were not being utilized correctly. There wasn't enough attention being given to it in the national security space. The communication between commercial, federal, academia, all of the above, it just was inadequate. And for them, they saw that there was a huge need in the industry for a Washington, D.C. based center of excellence for the entire industry as a whole. And through their market research and kind of viewing the industry from afar, having not been in the UAS industry themselves, they saw that there is a lot of immature processes. There's still a lot of potential to still be tapped into. And there was a long ways to go in creating kind of that cultural acceptance and maximum innovation on the American side of the house. So in comes Xelevate. Obviously, our team comes from the heavy national security intelligence community background, but that's just kind of one aspect of what we hope to bring to this facility. On our end, we want to kind of push the American arm of the unmanned systems industry, right? With the commercial dominance of companies like DJI over the last couple of decades and the rise of some of the DIU Blue programs. And, we solely exist here to kind of push American innovation and technologies in a region that, quite frankly, needs a place where we can put these entrepreneurial innovators on a stage and give them a showcase and highlight them. So, ultimately, this is all about providing infrastructure to the community and providing an established, safe, secure, reliant, cost-efficient facility where we can test, demonstrate, and host conferences and symposiums for the industry at large.
What makes Xelevate stand out from other UAS test centers?
I think a lot of people, when they hear about Xelevate and what we do and what we provide, I think a lot of people like to package us into the FAA-approved test sites that are scattered around the country. And while we certainly fit the billet for being a quote-unquote test site, we want to be seen as somewhat or so much more than that. We anticipate that the users that will be using the Xelevate facility will be spread across the entire industry as a whole. It's not just the manufacturers and OEMs and the pilots, it's the ancillary industries as well, right? It's machine learning, it's AI, it's UTM and airspace sanitization. It's really any part of the unmanned systems industry. We want to provide them this location to showcase and highlight what they have. So, and we're seeing a ton of use cases from all over the country, really, from companies that want to fly human organs to federal agencies that want to bring awareness to their operations on the border, academic institutions that want to bring, engineering students to work on their thesis projects. It's really the whole gamut. So our whole mentality here is that we want to create kind of a community and ecosystem create kind of a microcosm of the entire industry in DC. And so we think that it will hopefully be used by really the entire community.
Does the proximity to Washington, D.C. provide certain benefits that aren't available to other sites?
It's really interesting you ask about the proximity to DC. There are technological hubs around the country that speak for themselves, right? When emerging tech entrepreneurs, choose to create a startup in Silicon Valley, they do so because of the location, right? They want to surround themselves with influencers and social circles. It's really no different here in DC. And we're starting to see this more and more. You take Loudoun County, Virginia, which is where we're located, for example. This is a county that is technologically very innovative. They invested in data centers. 70% of the world's internet comes through Loudoun County. You think about all the government contracting companies that have headquartered here. And now you're seeing big tech companies like Google and Microsoft. They're putting up a big presence here in Northern Virginia and DC. And now we're seeing that a lot of these unmanned systems companies from around the country, they want to have an office here. They want to have a presence here so that they can get access to entities like the FAA. They can get access to politicians and lawmakers. They can have those conversations to forward and advance policy and regulation. So what we hope to provide with Xelevate is, we're trying to solve kind of that pain point for the industry in this region, right? We're less than an hour from the Hill. We're in one of the most technologically leading counties in America. And so the whole intention is that Xelevate provides them the place to set up shop. It's their premier DC-based destination where representatives can bring their stakeholders and we can bring out stakeholders, and it's a place where they can really mature, develop, and showcase their products. So that hasn't happened yet in this region, and that's kind of why we exist and what we're trying to bring.
Can you describe the facility and what it will offer? And when will it be in operation?
We are currently in phase 1 of a 3-phase approach. That sounds pretty immature, but we've come a really long way since we closed on our land about 6.5, 7 months ago. So just to kind of put it into perspective here, Xelevate is a 66-acre facility. Phase 1 right now is taking this gorgeous Loudoun County farmland and bringing it back to its former glory, right? And getting it flight ready. So phase 1 includes our 500-foot by 50-foot grass flight pad. It includes the conference and symposium pavilion space that we'll have, the commercial entrance, the 50-car parking lot, netted drone enclosures, basically getting the entire facility ready for operations. Additionally, what phase 1 includes is the ability for organizations and companies to start renting out lab space on the facility as well. So big part of creating this community and ecosystem is being able to walk down that flight line, that grass flight pad, and seeing effectively Connex containers turn labs and seeing really the very best of the industry out of those lab spaces. Phase 1 will conclude in the fall, which will culminate with our official grand opening starting on October 20th. But yeah, we're phase 1 of a 3-phase approach, but we've already got companies, federal agencies, and academic institutions utilizing our field and facility already because they see the value of us being here, and lots of momentum gaining so far. So,
what are the challenges in creating a site of this nature?
Some of the biggest challenges is that, this has never been done before, right? I mean, creating this true innovation and collaboration hub for every arm of the industry. We've seen this technology develop quicker than policy and regulation can sometimes keep up with. And we're seeing companies that are doing incredible things around the industry. But in a way, a lot of these organizations are kind of confined to their own cones of excellence. And for us, it's kind of how do we figure out what the industry needs? And for what we've figured out and what we've come to realize is that, there are best practices for the industry, but because it's so new and relative to aviation practices, it's really difficult to introduce UAS concepts and procedures. A lot of people who interface with the FAA, for example, feel that it's an easy transition to move from manned to unmanned. And that's clearly not always the case. We're seeing that there are organizations that take insurance, for example, don't realize that there's a difference between owned and non-owned aircraft insurance. What happens if you're a startup and you create a drone and your drone flies into someone's house? For us, it's providing kind of the infrastructure and all of the processes and procedures in place to give the industry a center of excellence like this. A lot of organizations are testing and demoing and developing their products at public institutions, right? So these are DoD facilities, or they're public airports, or they're ultimately flying in the middle of fields, wherever they can find places to go to. And we just don't think that that's an appropriate way for these incredible companies to be developing their products. So what Xelevate does is, the biggest challenge for us was how do we provide that solution to some of these organizations, a private solution, one where we can kind of work at the speed of business and not have to deal with a whole lot of red tape, but still provide proper procedures and processes, right? So safety management systems, risk mitigation procedures, having the concept of an air boss on presence to provide situational awareness to flight operations. I mean, there's so much that you can get at other facilities, but it's not always going to be cost efficient. It's not always convenient to wait 3 or 4 months to get into a facility somewhere. We want to kind of provide that one-stop shop for companies needing a place fast in this region to show off their products.
There have been articles that talk about creating a drone ecosystem at Xelevate. Why is this important?
From our perspective, like I kind of mentioned already, there's so much incredible innovative technology out in the ether, right? But it's clear that we've made so much progress so quickly in the last decade or so, and we're seeing so many great actors and leaders kind of marching to the beat of their own drums in this industry. And this is very typical for a variety of tech industries, with companies and CEOs trying to build the very best product or the very best UAS system, best AI software. But here at Xelevate, we kind of asked the question, what could be accomplished if we actually tried to collaborate more and innovate together? what could we do if we all worked together to further this industry as a whole? That's kind of our mantra at Xelevate. How do we link like-minded people together and help solve problems through this model? Additionally, too, this is a lot about workforce development as well, right? The unmanned systems industry is only growing. It's maybe some people will say it's maybe 30 or 40% built out. At this point, we have a long ways to go before this industry is fully mature. And so at Xelevate, we're asking a lot of questions about how can we deliver the next generation of workers for this industry. So that includes partnering with academic institutions, partnering with public school systems, integrating K through 12 programs. The theory is that student or youth in the local and surrounding communities could be walking on the field or working on a thesis in grad school. And then maybe Raytheon or, Leidos or some other big government contracting company or federal agency who's also using Xelevate, they'll be at the field together at the same time talking to each other. That's really the dream here at Xelevate, is that we kind of help further the workforce development aspect of this whole thing, because quite frankly, it's needed, and we see a lot of value in giving back to our community here and, furthering the industry as best as we can at a kind of a grassroots level.
What is Xelevate doing now to build that ecosystem?
Well, right now, we're so ingrained, I think right now in the first couple of months of us standing up the facility with trying to get the facility built out, trying to get our first initial customers and clients, starting to make strategic partnerships, et cetera. Right now, the biggest challenge in that regard is first establishing really community trust, right? So because we're not a DoD institution or an airport, we're kind of an unknown to the community and to the people that live in the region that we have put this facility up in. So right now, this is all about cultural acceptance, right? It's being able to go to your local country store and get lunch, and people are saying, hey, we saw that you guys are building a drone center of excellence, whatever that means, you're not going to be spying on me or flying over my house or doing this, that, and the other, right? So it's really about adequately communicating to our community and to people that live in our area what exactly we're doing, highlighting all of the good things that the UAS industry is doing while also keeping an eye on all of the bad. The industry itself could do a lot better at communicating to the general public really what these systems and what these technologies are going to be used for in the future. So we are putting an emphasis on that now. I'd say some of the smaller strides that we've made in that regard too is, for example, Marcy Eisenberg, our president, she's on the Loudoun County Education Foundation board. And they have asked her to really start working with them to start integrating, drone programs into K through 12. Anything from things ranging from writing and authoring a book for K through 12 to creating youth summer camps through our corporate partners here at the site. There's a myriad of different ways we can do it, but we are starting to slowly have those conversations, and that is a long-term goal for us. As
Xelevate evolves, how will you measure success?
We're kind of asked all the time, what does success look like for Xelevate? People ask, well, how do you make your money? And we say, it's lab rentals, it's airspace rental, it's renting the facility, it's hosting conferences and symposiums. And, we're not necessarily worried about that aspect. What success looks like to us is really, let's think about the safe adoption of drone practices and integration into the national airspace, so that there's a general understanding among the general public and its users and operators. If we can help forward that mission, I think that's success to us. And success does take shape in a lot of different forms. I think given our backgrounds, our team's backgrounds, our desire to serve our communities and give back to the aviation and tech industry, success to us is if we're able to affect positive change in this industry, help drive not just innovation, but drive policy and regulation. I touched upon that earlier. The whole concept of show, don't tell is the crux of all of this here at Xelevate. We've got a guy in our advisory council who is a former special operator who kind of gave a really unique analogy where he said when a new system that helps him and the warfighter overseas comes online, I got to be able to see it. I got to hold it. I got to touch it. I got to see the weight. Want to apply that same concept to the unmanned systems community, right? I can go to a trade show and walk around and read your pamphlets about all the cool things that your drone does. But until I see it fly, until I see it actually do something that wows me, I might not make a decision on it. I might not know what these things are capable of. So like I mentioned earlier, if we can kind of create this microcosm of the industry here and put people and technologies together to better their capabilities, be a discriminator for people that are looking for contracts, propel conversation and host those decision makers, I think then we'll be doing our jobs quite effectively. And then we'll say that, we've done the job that we set out to do.
Let's talk about the grand opening that's scheduled for October 20th. For those that attend the event, what can they expect to see?
It will be a one-day affair. It'll be in the middle of the week. It's on a Wednesday. Effectively, what this grand opening will look like is, we're taking the very best of what you would see at something like AUVSI's Exponential, the trade show approach, and kind of bringing it outdoors, right? So it's a tech expo meets an air show. What this grand opening is going to be is kind of a kickoff event for our local community, but also for the industry at large, right? So we're going to have the ability for companies to sponsor this event. And what will happen is when they come out to Xelevate, they'll be able to set up a booth. They'll be able to have their own tent. And then they're going to have a chance throughout the day to showcase and highlight what their capabilities are, what their technologies are, what their organizations do. And this is for everybody, right? I mean, this is academic institutions, this is manufacturers, this is local counter UAS companies and weather microdata platforms. Really anybody that is immersing themselves in this UAS industry have the opportunity that day to kind of talk a little bit about them and show the people what they do, not just talk about it like as they would at a trade show or whatnot. There are going to be academic institutions there. We're expecting a large number of VIPs at this event. So local and state representatives, congressional representatives, ex-directors of agencies and DoD flag officers. And we've got some entities from organizations like SpaceX, Microsoft, Raytheon, some of the big Fortune 500 companies that have already pledged representatives. So it's going to be a pretty big event. So right now we're just trying to organize that event for October. So we're getting close to that. But ultimately at the end of the day, this is kind of a celebration of what the best of the industry is, right? There's going to be food, drinks, atmosphere. There's going to be a social networking event in the evening after all the flying is done. We're really excited for it. And Loudoun County and the surrounding area is also very excited about it as well. So it should be a great time.
If someone was interested in getting involved as a sponsor or in some way partnering with Xelevate, what do they need to do?
Registration for the event is free. So if you are in the Northern Virginia area or you're on the East Coast and you want to come to the event, you can register for free. You can find the information for that on our website. It's www.xelevateus.com. So registration is free, but if an organization would like to come that day and actually maximize their visibility, actually have a booth, have a banner, have a sign, get a chance to talk about who they are and what they do, there are a variety of different sponsorship levels that they can choose from. And each level comes with it a different amount of visibility for that day. And that information can also be found on our website as well. And they can also contact me directly. Like I said, there's 4 of us. We're a family-owned business, and it's not too hard to get to the leadership at Xelevate. So anyone can reach out to me. My contact information is on the website, and I'd happy to have that conversation with whoever's interested. So,
what have you enjoyed most about working with Xelevate, especially developing the concept and getting ready to launch it?
To be quite candid, I don't have an aviation background. I don't have a UAS background. I was briefly with the Marshal service before this as a contractor. And then prior to that, I spent the majority of my early part of my career in higher education. But I think when I joined Xelevate, I saw just how important this disruptive technology was going to become in the next decade or so. I very quickly got a chance to understand just where this industry is. And I also very quickly saw how far behind I think the American UAS industry is in comparison to the rest of the world. And I just have this intrinsic desire to really help further and advance that cause. And we're all very passionate about it. I think this is going to be an incredible conduit for cultural awareness and spotlighting the good and highlighting the bad, as I mentioned earlier. What's really cool about this and what has been my favorite part about it is through my conversations with so many different leaders in this industry in just the 6 months I've been here, we're seeing trends in this industry due to that cross section of customers, partners, and leaders who are going to be at the facility. We're seeing where the industry is going at every level on an everyday basis. So that to me is the most exciting part about all of this. And I'm just happy to play a part of it and hopefully make a difference.
Can you describe the nature of the challenge for American companies in the unmanned system space and how Xelevate can help support them?
I kind of touched upon it earlier when I talked about how we're in this unique place in the history of kind of drone production and manufacturing here in the United States, where, 20, 30 years ago, countries like China, Israel, Turkey, they kind of saw the desire to invest in these technologies. Whereas, maybe in the 90s and 80s, the American government still saw these systems as toys. A lot of people did. And for the last decade or two, we've kind of only thought of, as a society, when we thought of drones, we only really thought about things like reapers and predators and, spying and killing overseas. And that's clearly not the case, right? So, we look at companies like the DIU Blue organizations, the 5 approved resellers to the DoD. We're asking kind of the tough questions of, why is it only 5? How do we highlight and showcase those entrepreneurs in states all the way on the West Coast? How do we get them in front of decision makers and legislators that probably need to come out and see these things fly and give them a chance to see all the good use cases that come out of all of this? Why hasn't that been done yet? I mean, it's taking place, of course, in facilities across the United States, but it's not happening in a location where it's convenient, and it's not happening in a location where we can get these politicians and legislators out quickly. I think recently the DoD, I believe, just gave a big contract to Israel, and we're kind of over here saying, why wasn't that an American company? Why can't we forward capabilities that we're creating right here in the United States and provide those services to our own government? So, those are not easy questions to answer, but we want to help provide answers to those questions. A big part of it too is it's expensive. You've got a company like DJI, for example, that, you can walk into Costco and buy a really good DJI product with a great camera and great maneuverability. It's very easy to learn and pick up, and it's $200 to $300. Whereas an American company producing something similar, the same quality, it's $1,000 or $2,000 or whatever the case may be, right? So it's also expensive. We want to try to help highlight these companies so that they get more exposure and they get the opportunity to be seen. And ultimately, we just want to kind of get ourselves back in the race and show that we are still a country that can produce some very innovative and effective technologies.
And for my last question, Preston, what message would you like to leave regarding the future of the drone industry?
That's a really tough question because there's so many different ways we could go. But I think the future of this industry is incredibly bright, and there's incredible energy and excitement. But it takes the entire industry working together to get us there. And we're seeing it. But from our perspective, we want the American unmanned systems industry to regain a competitive edge. We want to be the pinnacle of technological success and be a world leader in this field. And it really does take a village, so they say. And many people talk about how it only takes really one accident. It takes one terrorist attack. It takes one terrible accident somewhere before change happens. And we want to get ahead of that. We don't want just some terrible thing to happen on our border or overseas to instigate this change. We want this change to happen now. And we want to do our part in forwarding this industry to the best of our ability. So if we can do that even on a minuscule level, I think we'll be in a good spot.
That's it for episode 330 of the Drone Radio Show. I hope you enjoyed hearing from Preston Huntington of Xelevate Solutions. I want to thank Preston for taking the time to speak with me. If you want to learn more about Xelevate or want to connect with Preston, check out the webpage at xelevateus.com. If you like the Drone Radio Show, please consider supporting the podcast with a small donation. The content is always free, but for as little as $1, you can help defray the cost of production. To donate, go to droneradioshow.com/donate. And thanks for listening. Your support means a lot to me, and I hope you'll listen to more episodes of the Drone Radio Show podcast to hear how others are using drones for business, fun, and research. For the Drone Radio Show, I'm Randy Gores.
This has been the Drone Radio Show podcast. More information on today's show can be found on our website at www.droneradioshow.com. If you're using drone technology for business, fun, or research and would like to share your experience on the show, please visit our website and fill out a guest appearance application. And don't forget to follow us on your favorite social media channels.